I became the new world chess champion, and here is how. If a few years ago I asked you, do you know who Matthias Bluebaum is? What would be your answer? Well, most likely you would say, no, I don't know who that guy is. But nowadays your answer may differ, because Mathias Bluebaum is playing in the Candidates tournament this year. Candidates is one of the biggest chess tournaments and the hardest tournament to get into. But the question is still, how did I become the new world chess champion? To answer that question, let's have a look at this game, which is Mathias Bluebaum playing against Gukesh. And let's have a look at this game, which is me playing against Mathias Bluebaum. Now, if you pay careful attention, you can see that the pawn structure is very similar. In the game against me, Mathias Bluebaum is playing with the white pieces. In the game against Gukesh, he's playing with the black pieces. But in both of these games, he has a very similar pawn structure. He ended up beating Gukesh, and he ended up losing to me in under 30 moves. Now, experts speculate that the reason why this happened is because Gukesh overlooked the game against me when preparing against Mathias Bluebaum, whereas Bluebaum carefully analyzed the game against me to prepare against Gukesh. And as we will see in the game that Bluebaum played against Gukesh, he fixed his mistakes, and this is the main reason why he ended up beating Gukesh. So I indirectly taught Matthias Bluebaum how to beat the current world champion, which makes me the new world chess champion. Let's get started with the video. We'll have a look at both of these games and understand how Matthias Bluebaum improved his game and ended up beating the current world chess champion. Well, let's start with this one, which is me against Matthias Bluebaum. I beat him easily, really fast, so this is not going to be that long. We started things off with d4, knight f6. I wanted to go for the Banco gambit, to be honest, but then I realized that my opponent is not too much weaker than me, so I ended up going for e6, just to not give up a pawn for no reason. And e6 is a nice move, you get some center, you know. He goes knight c3, we get exchange, I just get my bishop out, nothing crazy. He goes knight f3, castle, bishop d3, this is all just simple theory. Now here there are two options. There is the move b5 or the rook e8. Now again, since I'm not really playing against a really weak opponent, I went for rook e8. But in your games, you can also go b5. Because the thing is, white cannot take either with the bishop or the knight. I mean, technically white can, but you can just win the pawn back. If bishop b5, you can do knight e4. Knight e4, you give queen a5 check. And then you end up winning the bishop back. And it becomes an equal position, basically. I mean, there's knight d6, queen a6, but you are technically fine in this position because your pieces are just better. And if it ends up taking with the knight on b5, then you go rook e8. The pawn is hanging, the pawn on d5 is hanging, so you again win your pawn back. That's why you can go for b5. But again, I wanted to keep it a little bit more chill, and I went for rook e8. We get castle, I tried a6 to get b5, he goes a4. I do knight d7, he goes bishop f4, and here I go knight h5. Just to hit his bishop. And if you may be wondering, what if he goes bishop d6? But that's not a very good move, as I have queen b6. And then I take on b2. Right? I mean, if you move your bishop, queen b2 is very devastating with this bishop helping the queen. So what you can try is probably e5. But then I just win your pawn this way, basically, on e5. So that's why he saw all of this and he did not take my pawn. He went for bishop h2. And now I go for this interesting move, knight e5. Just trying to get my knight into the center. Bishop e2, I exchange the knights and then I try to bring the second knight. Now there is no piece that is working against my second knight coming to the center. And after bishop e2, I of course see that he wants to go for f4. That's why I go f5. So that if he goes for f4, I go knight f7. And if he takes, I have bishop f5. He goes f4, I go knight f7. He goes bishop d3. I take on e4. He goes knight e4. Bishop d7. I'm trying to go b5. And by the way, this move f4 was a very big mistake by him. Positional mistake, of course, not like a blunder. Because I get all the dark squares my pieces can jump to. good position. Just a very weakening move if you think about that. And after I get this pawn, the pawn on d5 becomes a huge weakness. So after f4, black is already more pleasant. So the game is starting to shift towards my direction. And here it's literally -1 because after getting queen b6, taking on b6 was also a mistake by him because after getting queen b6, now there are a lot of problems. Starting with your weak pawn on d5, continuing with the pawn that's hanging on b2, and the third problem is the move c4, which blunders your piece. And this is exactly what overwhelmed him already because he was already bad out of the opening. The pawn on b2 is hanging, there's so many stuff, and he forgot about c4. He blundered c4, which is of course not what you expect a 3100 grandmaster to do. He protected his pawn and forgot about c4. So I end up winning his piece, but of course he continues to play, even though it's completely losing. I went on to take on b2 as well, another pawn. I get piece. And like, you cannot even take this back, by the way, because I got rook e1. He ends up taking it with the queen instead of with the rook, which is, I think, what he probably thought. He thought he cannot take with the rook because my opponent has queen c1. So he takes with the queen, but he forgets that I can take his rook because I got a bishop here. And not only does it win a rook, it also forces a queen exchange, after which it's an endgame where I have an extra rook and an extra piece. So of course, after the second blunder, he ends up resigning. And this game literally lasted less than 30 moves, where I easily beat Matthias Bluebaum out of the opening without any problem. Now let's have a look at the second, the more important game, where he beat the current champion Gukesh. In this game, he's playing against Gukesh. The opening doesn't start the way that you expect, because Gukesh doesn't develop his knights, he goes for bishop c4, which already, by the way, makes it better for black, because black goes d5, gets a nice center, and now it's like black is white, if you know what I mean, because black gains tempo. And that's how we landed this position, by the way, which is the same structure as in this game. But as you notice, I am black. Now Gukesh is white, but Gukesh has what I had with black. So you can already tell that Gukesh is technically playing with the black pieces because he wasted a tempo. He did not get his knight out in the opening. He got his bishop out and went bishop b3. So Mathias Bluebaum used this time to gain space in the center, and now he has a more pleasant opening. I'm not sure why Gukesh chose to do this, to be honest, because it was not required at all. It was probably part of his opening prep, or maybe some mess up in the opening, but either way, we land at a very similar situation. Gukesh goes for knight e2, trying the same knight e4 ideas that I tried in our game, but of course he's not going for knight e4, he goes for rook e1, and Bluebaum, knowing that knight e4 did not work out in his favor in the game against me, goes bishop f5 in hopes of stopping knight e4. However, Gukesh still goes for knight e4, which is a mistake, because in this case, after bishop e4, you're kind of forced to take with the rook. Obviously, if you take with the pawn, I get a passed pawn, which is protected. So Gukesh ends up taking with the rook, and now Bluebaum gets this nice idea of h6. If you go bishop h4, now Bluebaum can go g5, you move your bishop, and Gukesh will lose his rook. This means Gukesh is forced to take on f6 and say goodbye to his bishop pair, which was quite literally the only thing he had, if we exclude the fact that this bishop is very weak. So after bishop f6, queen f6, Gukesh goes rook e1, because quite literally this rook is very useless and can very easily get targeted by the knight. So he tries to go back. Bluebaum still goes for knight c5, which is really smart, and then goes a5, of course, to stop the move b4. So we can already see Bluebaum playing much better than he played against me in our game. He understands that he should keep working against this knight e4 move. He understands that he should not give white so much space like he gave me in our game. So you can already see his improvement in this game. He's at a quite pleasant position. Gukesh is going b3, which is another questionable move. Your bishop gets really destroyed after b3. I'm probably guessing his idea was to get a3 before with b3, but as we can see in the game, he didn't really quite make it. So b3 was kind of a waste of a move again, making your bishop really weak. Bluebaum goes for queen e6, which is a very nice move, trying to create some threats toward the opponent's king. Gukesh goes for queen h5. Bluebaum goes for f5, just grabbing the center, stopping any potential knight e4 ideas. And of course, trying to go for e4 himself, protected by the second pawn. We get rook e8 again. He's trying to solidify his situation in the center. Gukesh's rook d1 was also a little bit questionable. I'm guessing he thought that in the case of e4, this kind of stops e4. But I would argue it was better to solely focus on e4 and try to stop e4 itself. He may have thought of some ideas. E4 takes d takes e4 and then d3. That's what I would guess. But it's not like rook d1 really stops these ideas. These ideas can still be there after rook d1. This e4 and then d3 idea, as we can see in the game, is going to happen later on. Bluebaum goes for queen f6, which is also a good move. And then he tries to maneuver his knight, because he realizes that it cannot last much longer on c5, especially after a3. Gukesh is going to go b4. So it's just better to maneuver it to better squares where the knight has more potential later on. I like this knight d2 idea by Gukesh and then queen f3. This is very important for sure. It's again working against e4, trying to gain some sort of control in the center. Now here Bluebaum overlooks this bishop a3 idea a little bit. It's actually strong. I'm guessing he didn't like queen b7, but I mean, this is only working in your favor because now you can go knight c5 and then bishop b4 maybe. Right, now you get your dream because you exchange that a pawn with the b pawn. Now Gukesh has no way of getting a3 b4. So now your knight can comfortably stay on c5, which is what you want, and then just get e4. But he overlooks his bishop a3 and protects the pawn on b7 instead of that. Here Gukesh goes for c5, which is a great move, trying to get some last-ditch effort at least, trying to get some activity. Here, instead of knight c4 though, he should have gone queen d5, hitting the pawn on e5, and then knight c4 to like add some real pressure on the pawn on e5. But he goes knight c4 right away because he overlooks the move e4 after knight c4. After d takes e4, the reason this is a good move is because Bluebaum is not going to take on e4 and lose a pawn on e4. He's going to go for knight g5, and then he's going to move the queen out of the way. Now, the point is that now your queen is under attack. And when you move your queen, now I get d3 hitting your bishop and hitting on f2. Obviously, Gukesh has to save his bishop, otherwise he'll lose a piece. But then Bluebaum hits him with the bishop f2 idea, taking Gukesh's rook, and Gukesh is already almost going down, quite literally. Bluebaum is trying to bring his piece out and finds this incredible queen e5 move. Because when you take on g5, he's going to take on g5. And now he's trying rook h6, winning your queen. If you get your queen out, then after king g1, queen h2 will be checkmate. So you can, under no circumstance, ever take that knight. So Gukesh goes rook g1, but now Bluebaum finds another great move, queen g3. And this is where Gukesh, the current world champion, ends up resigning. Because Bluebaum is trying to get rook f4, followed by rook h4, which was quite literally unstoppable. And Gukesh was forced to give up his queen. And he ends up resigning in the following position. And this is how Matthias Bluebaum ended up using the experience that he gained against my game, against Nar 8 Cheese. And he used this experience to beat the current world champion. Now, this means that I am now announcing me as the current world champion after Gukesh Dommaraju. And I am looking forward to the candidates tournament to see who I'm going to face in the world championship. I'm going to have a close look at the candidate tournament this April, but hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.